Hello everyone and welcome to the McDonald Chronicles. Today we're going to talk all about my best reads of 2020, more specifically all of my 5-star reads of 2023. I want to see if they hold up after some of these books I've read a year ago, if I remember them, if I would still give them 5 stars today, or if I was kind of just being generous after reading it and loving it. So let's dive right in. My chai, it's on a coaster, don't worry, I'm not destroying a book. All right, let's go. All right, so the first one is Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead. This is actually the second book in the Finlay Donovan series. It's a cute little mystery series. Basically, the premise of the whole thing starts, Finlay's a writer, and she's in a coffee shop explaining her next mystery kind of murder book to her agent, and someone overhears her thinking that she's an assassin. And so you kind of follow her throughout the first book, deciding if she actually wants to be an assassin, or how she's going to make this writing thing work. And then the first book kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and that's where the second one takes off. So I don't remember really specific details about this second book. I kind of remember what happened. I remember how it ended. I remember really enjoying it. Quick read. So definitely good if you want something fast-paced, cute. I gave this one 5 stars. I read it back in March. I'm not sure that the 5 stars really holds up. I feel like I would have remembered a lot more about it if it should still be 5 stars. So we'll see. I liked it. Maybe now I think I would give it like a 4 or 4.5 star. Next we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. A lot of my hardcovers right now a lot of my books right now are from the library, and they very annoyingly put the sticker on the front. I don't know why they do that, but it drives me nuts. So this book I read on Kindle Unlimited, but I wanted to get the hard copy for this video, and I love this book. I owe this book my reading life. Literally, I read this book in June of last year, and up until this point, I had only read 7 books in all of 2024 or 2023. So I'd only read 7 books in all of 2023, and I ended the year in 55, and literally this book started all of it. Every last thing. I think I read it in 3 days. It follows Naomi. She goes to a small town. She's kind of escaping. I believe she breaks up. Yeah, she breaks up with her fiance, and so she goes to knock him out. That's like this town. And she becomes a waitress, and there's a bar owner there. Wow, I'm forgetting everything. Oh yeah, Knox. How can I forget? So basically it just goes through their romance. It's like a small town, kind of enemies to lovers thing going on. Spicy for sure. There's now 3 books in the series. I've read them all. I really liked them all, but this one specifically I gave 5 stars. I couldn't put it down. I loved it. Highly recommend. The next one, Riley, Thorne, and the Corpse in the Closet. So I figured that after reading Things We Never Got Over, I would kind of read more Lucy Score because I really enjoyed it so much. I think I read Things We Never Got Over and the second one literally back to back. So Riley Thorne is kind of like a mystery series. She's a psychic, but she doesn't really want to believe she's a psychic. And she gets paired up with Nick, this private investigator. And so it's kind of this whole thing about how they don't really get along and how they solve problems. And so this book is the second book in the series. So I don't remember exactly what happens. I remember, again, really enjoying it, really quick read. I think she's making more Riley Thorne books. I know there's 3 or 4 total, but I'm pretty sure she's coming out the next one. But they're all on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have that, it's like a really quick read and like a really cute series. I liked the vibe of the fact that like she was a psychic and he was a private investigator, and how did those 2 worlds kind of collide, especially because she's denying that she's a psychic. So it's like how she's dealing with that, but then also using her powers to figure out what they need to figure out. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I don't necessarily know if the 5 stars would hold up, but definitely a high 4 for sure. All right, so then we have my first Colleen Hoover book, The Star and Sticker. I'm telling you, reminders of him. I read this one on Kindle Unlimited, I believe, as well. This book made me cry a lot. I wouldn't say that after reading this I became obsessed with Colleen Hoover. I still think I've only read maybe like 2 or 3 of her books. But to me, if a book makes me react the way this book made me react, 5 stars. It follows Kenna, who is basically just getting out of prison for this mistake that she made, and they go into it, I don't want to spoil it, this mistake that she made, and it resulted her going to prison and losing her daughter. So she goes back to the small town kind of where everything happened, hoping to get her daughter back. And she develops a relationship with a bar owner in town whose name is Ledger. That's right. Character names just escape me. So Ledger's the bar owner in town, but because of what she did and the way she left the town and everything that happened, them being even just friends is like totally forbidden. So it kind of takes you through that and how she's dealing with what she did in the past, how she's forgiving herself. They tell you what happened and her journey to like reconcile with her daughter and all this stuff. I think, is it told in differing points of view? Yes, which I love. So it's told in Kenna's point of view and Ledger's point of view, which I love when it goes back and forth. I think this one does too. Things We Never Got Over. Yeah, it does, which I just love that. I think that's really cool in the point of view shift. So highly recommend. Definitely pick it up. Again, I don't know a lot about Colleen Hoover, but this one, the 5-star holds. All right, then we have Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I went on like this kick, I guess, where I just wanted to cry because my next few books were all crying books, and this one specifically I gave 5 stars to. It follows a girl named Macy, and it's like 10 years in the future, and her first love is Elliot, and they were like in love, they lived next to each other. It was kind of like her summer home, I think. They lived next to each other, and they loved reading, and they connected over that, and then something happened, and they basically stopped talking. Like, Macy stopped talking to Elliot, and they literally run into each other, like physically run into each other outside of a coffee shop like a decade later. And so it's going back and forth between now and Macy kind of figuring out if she even wants to speak to Elliot, and Elliot trying to figure out why she's not talking to him anymore, and then back to 10 years ago about how their love started, and then eventually it gets to the head of why she no longer speaks to him. I read it in a day. It was so, so good. Definitely recommend Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. Then we have The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Everyone's read this book. Everyone knows The Housemaid. So this is a thrillery type book. It follows a nanny who is nannying for this like rich family, and they kind of have like a spoiled daughter, and so she's trying to figure out if she wants to even stay there. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the nanny has a record. I'm pretty sure she has a record, so she can't really go anywhere else, and so she's staying at this job because it's like her only option, because no one else is going to hire her because of her record. And then there's a big twist at the end. I really liked this one. I didn't see the twist coming. I will say, like, I read the second one as well, and I didn't like the second one as much. This one, I especially loved. I finished this in a few hours. Like, during my daughter's naps, I just literally read and read and read until I was finished. And I know other people have, like, finished it in a day as well. So if you're into thriller type books, I definitely recommend. If you've seen the spoilers, I feel like it kind of ruins it, because I think that's like the pull of this one, is the ending. I really never saw it coming, so highly recommend. 5 stars, still holds up. So the next one is The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. You might know her. She'll come up again. So, but this one tore me up. This one was so good. It basically follows Georgia, whose great-grandmother has passed, and Georgia goes back to her great-grandmother's estate and trying to figure out like what happened, how to move on with her life, etc., etc. And the great-grandmother is like this famous author who wrote all these books. And there's one story that she didn't publish that she's like, I will never publish, but she kind of started working on it. And it's basically her story and how she fell in love with her then husband, who no one had ever met because he died in World War II. So they kind of go through that story, and it's alternating timelines. So it's Georgia in the present trying to figure out what to do with that, because her mom basically went behind her back and hired this other author to finish the great-grandmother's story, which Georgia didn't like, but essentially she was like, well, if he's going to finish it, I'm going to watch him. So it's them kind of, and what's happening in the present, and them going through all of the great-grandmother's things and trying to piece together this story and kind of how their relationship develops, and then back to the great grandmother and like literally what's happening and what they're writing about. It was so good. I loved the alternating timelines. I loved the like history kind of aspect of it. I cried also in this one. I just love this book. So if you're into like a romance, but also into like a history, I definitely recommend. 5-star holds. All right, then we have The Midwife of Auschwitz. This book was really good. It was really hard to read. But it's following these two women who are prisoners of Auschwitz, and they are midwives. Like one says she's a midwife and one says it's her assistant. And it basically follows them through how they're getting through the camp, the horrible things that happen there, and then also what's happening to all the babies that are born there. And ignorantly, I didn't even think about that. Like nowhere on my radar was what's happening to the babies or what had happened to the babies in these camps. And that was really hard to read. So definitely know if you want to pick it up, which I highly recommend that you do, just know that like huge trigger warning. It is challenging to read at times, but I think it's important to read it. I cried a lot, like not just like at the end, like some of the other books, like throughout the entire book, I was crying and I was like very upset. So there are 1 or 2 more books left in the series, and I do want to read them eventually. I just have to be in the right mindset to read them because they are challenging and difficult to read. It's definitely not like a book you're gonna pick up and like be in a great mood when you finish it. But it's still a really good book and a book I think worth reading. So 5 stars definitely still holds up. All right, now we have the Red Rising series. This is a sci-fi series by Pierce Brown. It follows, the first book kind of starts off with Darrow, and essentially this is a world where there are different classes of people based on like their colors. So there's reds and golds, I think there's like obsidians, there's grays, and the reds are the lowest of the lows. So they have been told that they are making Mars inhabitable for future generations to come. So they're like in like mines doing all these crazy things, like very unsafe jobs, very dangerous jobs, just so that they can make Mars inhabitable for future generations. That's why they're doing it. So something happens and Darrow ends up finding out that, this is not a spoiler, it's on the back book. Darrow ends up finding out that it was a lie, that Mars has been inhabited this entire time and the Reds are basically just slaves. And so in this book, you're following Darrow as he decides how he's going to deal with that and basically rebel against them. I don't want to say too much because it kind of gives it away, but so you kind of go through him in this book following that. I gave this one 5 stars and I highly recommend this, even if you don't think sci-fi is your thing, because I don't feel like I read too much sci-fi either. This one came highly recommended, and honestly my husband read it and said it was really good, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll read it. So good. The second one, I don't want to like say too much about the second and third one because then it will give away what happens, but you're just continuing to follow Darrow in these 2 stories. I gave Morningstar 5 stars. Morningstar is the third one in the series. I didn't give this one 5 stars, and honestly, I think it's just because of when I read it. I was away and I read like little pieces of it at a time. I think if I had read it and like sat down the way I was reading Morningstar and Red Rising, I think I would have also given it 5 stars. So I'm gonna like kind of throw it in here even though I didn't give it 5 stars. I'll probably end up honestly rereading the trilogy sometime in the future, but very good, highly recommend. Basically, this is the trilogy. There's more. So there's, I'm looking over there because it's over there on the table. There's like Iron Gold, I think it's called, and then there's Dark Age as well. I don't necessarily know how Darrow fits into those ones because I haven't read them. I do plan on reading them, but if you want a good sci-fi series, definitely recommend the Red Rising series for sure. All right, now we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I had never read an Emily Henry book before Book Lovers. I knew that she was well loved, especially, you know, BookTube and TikTok and all that stuff. I feel like I see her everywhere, but I had never read one, and I had put a lot of her books on hold at the library, and Book Lovers just kind of came up first. Just love books about people who love books. So, and I just really liked the premise of this one. The whole premise is that the main character, Nora, is basically the girl that gets left behind. So, you know, like when in a Hallmark movie, the guy goes to a small town and he falls in love with, like, I don't know, the baker or something. And then he leaves behind his career-oriented, crazy girlfriend in the city. Nora is the girlfriend in the city. So she keeps getting left behind, and it's just happened again. And she's a literary agent, and her sister has convinced her to go to a small town called Sunshine Falls. So one of Nora's like best authors wrote this whole series, and she based it off of this town called Sunshine Falls. And so Nora's sister convinces her to go to Sunshine Falls. She's like, you know, it's your turn for a small town romance. Nora's like, yeah, whatever, fine, I'll go because you asked me to, but I don't want to go. So she goes, and while she's in Sunshine Falls, she runs into Charlie, who is someone she knows from the book business. Charlie is an editor, and he's also from the city, but for some reason, he's in Sunshine Falls, and that kind of comes out as the book is being read. So it's kind of their romance and what happens to them, why they're both in Sunshine Falls. And I really, 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 really liked it. It was a fast read. I liked the characters. Some parts like could be a little cheesy, but I feel like that's just a given with romance books. Again, I just love that they loved books, and I just thought it was really, really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. All right, so 12 and 13 on my 5-star list were Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. Fourth Wing starts off and you're following our main character, Violet, and basically where they live, the town of, I think it's Navarre, well, it's not really a town, it's like a kingdom. It's a fantasy book. So Navarre, she is supposed to, or has been her whole life, training to go into something called the Scribe Quadrant, which is basically historians. They write everything down, they go through past histories, and they do all of that. Very safe, very like, you're in a library all day kind of thing. So she's been training her whole life to do that. And her mom is the head general of something called the Riders Quadrant, or the Riders basically. And they have dragons. So at the last minute, you know, when Violet is supposed to essentially go, I don't want to say sign up, but go to the Scribe Quadrant, her mom says, actually, you're not, you're going to be a rider. And the thing about the riders is their whole year, it's kind of like an academy if you think about it, but their whole year is them basically proving they deserve a dragon. So it's really dangerous. And like from the moment they try out for this, essentially, they're walking across like this parapet, which is basically them trying not to die. And so Violet has this syndrome where her bones are kind of brittle and her joints are as well. And so she gets kind of injured quickly. And so for her, it's almost like a death sentence to have to go into the Riders Quadrant. So you're following her throughout Fourth Wing as she's doing her year in the Riders Quadrant and how she deals with that and who she meets along the way and her old friends that are there, and her siblings that were riders as well, and kind of figuring out what happened there. And then it ends on a cliffhanger, which obviously I won't tell you. And then Iron Flame picks up right where that book left off. So I really, really like these books. I think if you like fantasy, it's definitely worth a read. I liked Rebecca Yarros's writing from The Things We Leave Unfinished, so having that was really good. I gave them both 5 stars. Honestly, Fourth Wing, for sure, 5 stars. I don't know if I would still give Iron Flame 5 stars, to be honest with you. I think I liked it because I like Fourth Wing so much and I really liked continuing the story. But then as I had some time away from it, I was like, there were some things I didn't love about Iron Flame, which I'm sure like you heard, but like there's one part where Violet and Xaden are writing letters to each other and you don't see the letters. You just like get random snippets of the letters, which I thought was kind of weird. And then there were points in Iron Flame that just like had really heavy, without like spoiling anything, really heavy Game of Thrones vibes, which was cool because I liked Game of Thrones, but it also made it so I kind of knew it was coming, if that makes sense. I still really liked them, and I'm definitely going to continue the series. I think that I'll reread both of them before the third one comes out. I don't even think she's slated to publish it this year, so I'll probably reread them before the third one comes out, because honestly, I picked up Iron Flame, and because it picked up right where Fourth Wing left off, I read the first chapter, and I had completely forgotten how it ended for some reason. So I think it's worth reading it just to make sure, like, I know exactly, like, what they're building and what's happening. But Iron Flame, what I like about it is she doesn't end them, like, sometimes in a series it ends in like a, oh, okay, we'll see next time. But she really does end them on a cliffhanger. Like, when I ended Iron Flame, I got up and walked around and I was like, I cannot believe that happened. I did not see that part coming. So that part I really enjoy about it, because I think it's easy to just end a fantasy book or just end a series book in general with not really a cliffhanger. It's kind of tied, and like you start the next book, but you didn't really need to start the next book, if that makes sense. But these, for sure, you need to keep going on. So definitely Fourth Wing, still 5 stars. Honestly, might be higher than 5 stars. Iron Flame, I'll keep it at 5, but if not, a very high 4. Very high 4. All right, then we have Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. I actually listened to this book on audio on Spotify. I don't know if you guys know that, but you can listen to audiobooks on Spotify now, which is really cool. And I love the audio of this one. I don't know how it is reading it. I had a couple people that I knew who read the physical or like the Kindle version of this, and they didn't love it as much. I loved this, and I really think part of the reason why I loved it was because of the audio. Like, the audio was so good. I felt like I was watching a movie. I really did. It starts off with Jen, our main character, watching her son murder someone. I think he's 18. He like just turned 18. She like watches him out her window in her house. He murders someone and he gets arrested. And she's obviously freaking out about that. And then the next day she wakes up and she finds out it's the day before. And so as the book progresses, she's just like going farther and farther back in time. Sometimes she goes back a day. Sometimes she goes back weeks at a time. Sometimes it's years at a time. And her task, or what she believes her task is to find out why her son killed that guy and if she can stop it. And what role does she play in that, and how can she stop her son from ruining his life? And it was so good. I mean, there's a twist at like towards the end of the book, and once you get to a certain point, I feel like you see that coming, but you don't see it coming like in the beginning at all. So highly recommend. I'm going to check out other books by Gillian McAllister as well, because I just feel like the writing was so good and I just really enjoyed it. The one thing I will say though is it did take a little bit to get into. So I know other people I know that read this said like it was like page 120 when they started really getting into it. I have no idea what part it was, but for me it was like an hour or 2 hours into the audio, maybe even 2.5. I wasn't super into it, but after that, I mean, I was listening to it every chance that I got. It was so good. So definitely recommend. 5 stars, still holds. And the last book of 5 stars, actually the last book I read in 2023, The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. Nothing groundbreaking in this one. It's just like a cutesy little romance. We have Hannah, who is actually a bodyguard, and she's kind of I guess you could say not your typical bodyguard, because she's small and like no one suspects her to be a bodyguard, and she's tasked with guarding Jack Stapleton, who is like a huge celebrity, against his stalker. And so it comes out that Jack's mom is really sick, and so he has to go live on like his family's ranch with his family, but he doesn't want the mom to know that he has a stalker because he doesn't want to worry her. So then he decides to ask Hannah if she'll pretend to be his girlfriend so that his mom doesn't get worried. And she doesn't want to, but she agrees. And it kind of like just follows them like that, like her pretending to be the girlfriend and like how their romance, develops and like kind of what happens. It's cute. Like obviously there's cheesy parts because it's a romance, and I just feel like with a romance, like cheesy parts are just kind of inevitable. But I still think it was really cute. Definitely still keeping the 5 stars, and I have Hello Stranger too that I want to read, because I just really enjoyed Catherine Center's writing, and I thought it was really easy to read. It went really quick, and I really, really liked it. So highly recommend The Bodyguard. All right, that's it. So I guess in 2023, I had 15-star reads. I would say most of them still hold up to 5 stars. I will link all of the books below, so if you're interested in them, you can definitely check them out. Definitely check out your local library first, because like I said, I got a lot of them from on there, and also a lot of them came from Kindle Unlimited. So if you're, I would highly recommend checking that out as well. But thanks so much for taking time to watch, and I will see you next time. Cheers.